Welcome to the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and Heat training camp begins in 3 days. So we have to talk about how the top storylines are going to possibly shake out while the Heat are training in the Bahamas before preseason begins in early to mid-October. But before we do that, make sure you follow me over on Twitter because we also have Heat Media Day on Monday, September 30th, and I'll be posting clips, quotes, reactions to everything coming out of Media Day. We'll see how Jimmy Butler arrives, whatever crazy hairstyle, or if he's doing that this year. Hopefully just walks in normal and means business. But either way, we'll have you covered over my Twitter as well as on YouTube. So give me a follow, and the first 10 people to follow me on today's show get a follow back. All right, the first storyline that I want to talk about. Who ends up being the starting lineup for Miami? Now, I doubt that we'll get a real indication who starts for Miami in the first game of the season against Orlando during training camp, but I am intrigued to see some of these different combinations Miami ultimately runs. The only two people that we know for absolute certainty that are going to be starting day one for the Miami Heat, assuming no injuries, is Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Those two are your locked-in starters. But the other three players could be moved around. You could see some combination of Terry Rozier, Tyler Herro, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez Jr., heck, maybe even Haywood Highsmith be in that starting group. But the only certain thing is Jimmy and Bam could be there. Obviously, one of Terry and Tyler are going to be in the backcourt, but we don't know which one it's going to be, and that's one of the big storylines is, do they play those four together? And then if they do that, who is that starting four? Is it going to be more sized Nikola Jovic, or is it going to be more of a versatile play of Haywood Highsmith or Jaime Jaquez Jr.? I think there are a lot of different possibilities on the table, and I am very excited to see what Erik Spoelstra ultimately cooks up in those initial lineups. Now, in training camp, it does happen quite a bit where they create two even starting lineups, so it might be a little bit delayed until we see the A group for Miami. And I'll always say this, by the way, when it comes to the Miami Heat, it really never, to me, matters who starts the game. It is always about who is closing the game. The closing lineup for the Miami Heat is always way more important than the starting lineup, in my opinion. But either way, I'm fascinated to see who ultimately starts for Miami in Game 1, and I think we'll get some indication of where Spoelstra's leaning during training camp. But give me the combination that you would prefer. Drop your ideal starting lineup for the Miami Heat when they host the Orlando Magic on October 23rd down in the comment section. All right, storyline number 2. Who gets the 3 two-way contracts for the Miami Heat? Now, currently the two-way contracts go as follows. There's Drew Smith still on a two-way. There is Keshad Johnson, don't know why I blanked, and then Josh Christopher. But there are a lot of possibilities. Now, I'll say this. My full prediction is as follows. I think Keshad Johnson gets it. I think Josh Christopher stays on the two-way. And I think Isaiah Stevens ultimately steals that two-way contract from Drew Smith. But there are a lot of people potentially vying for that final spot. Keshad feels like a lock. Christopher feels like a lock because they wouldn't have made that switch from Zion Poland to Josh Christopher in late July if they didn't feel it was absolutely necessary to give him a two-way contract that early. So to me, the last spot of Drew Smith is the one that is up for grabs. Now, there's Isaiah Stevens. Zion Poland is there as well. There is another roster spot available for the Miami Heat in terms of who they can bring in the training camp. You're allowed to bring in 21 players to TEC. Right now they have 20 after the signing of Nassir Little earlier in the week. Nassir Little, by the way, is not eligible to get a two-way contract. I think that's important to know. I initially kind of thought it could be a Exhibit 10 that leads to a two-way deal on that initial video, but due to the tenure of Nassir Little, he can not be on a two-way contract. So it will have to go to someone else. And I do think it's going to be Isaiah Stevens just due to the playmaking ability he flashed during Summer League, where he averaged damn near 10 assists. He averaged almost 10 points per game, was efficient, shooting 40% plus from beyond the arc, and was one of the main reasons why Miami ultimately won the Summer League championship with Kel'el Ware, Pallel Larson, and the rest of the crew. So I think those are going to be your 3, but I wouldn't rule out Zion Poland if he shows up to training camp much more improved than what he showcased while he was a member of that Summer League team. Because remember, the Heat did give Zion Poland a two-way contract right after the draft, as they thought they needed to in order to get him down to the 305 after being a Florida Gator last season. but I do expect it to be Isaiah Stevens. He just showcased too much good stuff during the Summer League, and I believe that Miami will ultimately reward him with a final two-way contract. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Like I said, we're going to have coverage of Media Day on Monday, September 30th, but also the start of training camp in the mid portion of the first week of October. So make sure you're subscribed and locked in because you won't want to miss a thing around the Miami Heat. All right, storyline number 3. What ends up happening with Nassir Little? The Heat signed him to a non-guaranteed contract on Monday evening, a one-year deal. So it did not obviously add any money to the books, because if they added money to the books, well, they would have crossed the second apron, which is just way too punitive, and it would have put so many limitations on this roster and the way they can make moves during the deadline and during the season, and that just makes no sense whatsoever. But Little, does he have a chance to make the team? Now, if he makes the team, he would have to guarantee his contract and then ultimately release someone unless they wanted to go into the second apron, which I don't see them doing. So if Nassir Little showcases the right amount of talent and the right amount of versatility that Erik Spoelstra wants, well, then who gets released? I don't think anyone really comes to mind here. Maybe Josh Richardson, but that would be quite the surprise to me. He's on a vet-min $3 million contract after he opted into a player option. Maybe Nassir Little places him, but I would be shocked by that. It's not going to be Kevin Love. I'd love for it to be Thomas Bryant, but after signing in free agency, I don't think he's even eligible to be waived/released this early in the season. In a month or two, maybe he could be, but at least right now, no. So what was the point of bringing Nassir Little in? Because if you can't have him on a two-way contract, you obviously wanted to bring him in for a reason. Can he make it worth it? Can he perform in training camp, put his name on the maps of potentially making this roster, and then carry that momentum into the 3 or 4 preseason games for Miami and fight for a roster spot? We'll have to see. It's a major storyline if you're asking me. All right, before we get into my final storyline of today's show, make sure you are representing the Heat off the court. And if you're a hat guy like myself or a hat girl, this hat's for you. It's adjustable. It's two-tone colors. I love the cream color base with the red cap. You also have the nice little logo on the side and the front. It's got everything that I personally look for in a Miami Heat hat, and I assume that you guys might like it at home as well. Get yours today, $10 off, usually $33, only $23. Chatsports.com/Heat hat is the link. We'll have that in the description and comments of today's video. Grab yours today before the price returns back to its normal number. All right, storyline number 4. How often does Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware get minutes together in training camp? Now, kind of like what I mentioned with the starting lineup thing, it's likely that Erik Spoelstra is going to split up groups to see who fits with who in terms of 1 through 5 and have Bam go up against Kel'el Ware. Bam go against Kevin Love. But I would like to see him mix in some lineups where we see Bam and Kel'el Ware together. And the Heat have the bodies to do that, right? Even if you want to create 2 equal groups, you can still have a 5-man lineup that features whatever combination 1 through 3, and then Bam and Kel'el in the 4-5, and then the other lineup have whatever combination 1 through 3, and then have, well, Thomas Bryant and Kevin Love on the other group. So there are ways to still work to see how these two guys play together. You drafted Kel'el Ware 15th overall in the first round. He played extremely well in Summer League, showcased the ability to space the floor, rim protect, rim run, and defend extremely well, and I just could not be more excited to see how that fares. And I also think it's a good idea to get Nikola Jovic potentially some looks alongside Kel'el Ware, alongside Bam, actually defending Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware. Because Jovic is 6'10", 6'11", Kel'el's 7 feet. So you can actually have Jovic line up against Kel'el Ware to see how they two interact in a one-on-one setting. Have them two play each other in a 5-on-5 setting, guard each other, extend on the perimeter, drive inside, rebound. I think it's only going to make each other better. And although I have said all offseason that I think the Heat need to make a big-time move in order to improve their roster to be on the same tier as a Boston, as a New York, as a Philadelphia, I still think there are a lot of talent on this basketball team, and iron sharpens iron. I'm not going to say it's the best roster in basketball, but I am confident saying it's a competitive roster. And I think the 1 through 8, 1 through 9 are very, very good. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how they play against each other and make each other better, specifically in the front court. But you can also say the same thing on the wings with Highsmith, Jimmy, Jaquez, and some other players. Also the sniper battle of Alec Burks, Duncan Robinson. I'll be fascinated to watch that one. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Like I said off the top, make sure you're following me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. I'll have clips, highlights, and everything you need from Media Day and training camp. So make sure you're following me over there. Remember, first 10 people to give me a follow, get a follow back.